10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Rising Coaches Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Gordon. I'm very excited about today's episode. Before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you by Lucio Sports. Visit our friends at luciosports.com or on social media at Lucio Sports. They're changing the game. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the NCAA is now allowing technology in huddles. So hopefully you're figuring out with your staff, along with all the other changes that's going on this year with transfers and NIL. This is a big one that can give you a distinct advantage. So how are you going to integrate technology into your huddles? Do what the pros are doing. Check out the NBA games. They're all using Lucio Sports in huddles. They've got their iPad out. The days of scribbling crazy lines and plays in huddles and timeouts are over. Now you pull out your iPad. You've got through Lucio Sports, you can do play diagrams, animated play diagrams. You hit play, you can go through the same play 3 or 4 times in a 30-second timeout. The efficiency numbers that they have of teams that use their product for ATOs are off the charts. Go check it out, luciosports.com or on social media at Lucio Sports. Also, while you're at it, visit risingcoaches.com and check out the events we have coming up. We've got one. We've got 2 conferences. We're back in person after the COVID layoff, June 17th through the 18th in Phoenix, right before the Section 7 high school recruiting event. We'll be out there at State Farm Stadium, home of the Arizona Cardinals, which will be awesome. We'll be at the top of the dome overlooking the stadium. We've got an unbelievable speaker lineup, which we just released. And then we'll be in Atlanta July 6th through the 7th. Right before the AAU period starts. And you guys know that's always crazy in Atlanta. They got Under Armour will be out there. Nike will be in Georgia. Hoop Scene, all the events that always take place in Atlanta. We'll be there to kick that weekend off. Again, July 6th through the 7th. We'll be at Park Stadium, which is the stadium at Georgia State right downtown Atlanta. Again, it'll be beautiful. We got a new trend, I guess. We're setting a precedent from being at the top of football stadiums. So come check us out and hope to see you guys there. You can sign up today at risingcoaches.com. All right. Very excited for today's show. Bringing in a good friend and really super influential person behind the scenes of college basketball, Brandon Goble from JUCO Advocate, from Verbal Commits. He's got his hand in a lot of different things. Brandon, good morning, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for today's show. I'm excited for this conversation.
I'm so behind the scenes. I literally have the one picture I could send you yesterday that exists of me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can never find the thing. It's buried in my phone. So
we gotta, me and you both, we gotta set up a photo shoot sometime somewhere so we got more pictures. Yeah, Brandon, excited for you to be on here.
I appreciate it.
I think most people probably who listen to our podcast know who you are, but for those that don't, Brandon kind of came into the scene with JUCO Advocate, right?
Yep.
And I'll let you kind of give us your background in a minute, but you know, when you get the 30,000 foot view and the elevator pitch, JUCO Advocate, I think started as a recruiting service for JUCO basketball players, which
Pretty
sounds
much,
like a very niche thing, but that doesn't come close to doing the justice of the impact that you've had on the game over the last, 5 to 10 years. Why don't you tell us kind of like how you got started and how you built JUCO Advocate, and then maybe we can dive into like how you've grown out of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I got into basketball doing analytics stuff with some D1 guys. And actually, it's funny you were talking about Lucio Sports there. And I'm thinking back to the head coach of the staff that I was helping at the time, and thinking of handing him an iPad in a huddle. He's not in basketball anymore. And this technology stuff is fantastic, and like how it changes the game and makes it more efficient and like allows different angles and things like that. And that iPad would have wound up in somebody's dome if you'd have handed the thing to him back then. But yeah, I got into basketball doing analytics, and doing math stuff, and had met a kid that had been in the military and wanted to play college basketball, didn't know what to do. Your clock stops when you join the military, right? So straight out of high school, he joined the Air Force, and he was a combat veteran for 6 years. And so I met this kid, and I'm like, I don't know anybody, but I'll work you out and film you, and we'll see if we can find something. And our buddy Sam Winooski, who had been on the staff that I was helping, was down at Midland Junior College. And I was literally like the one person in basketball I knew outside of little group that I was helping. And so I sent it down to him, and he's like, yeah, you can come down here and play at Midland. And so he went down there, and he started for him for a year. And he was so smart and had done some classes while he was in the military that he got his AA right away. And he's like, hey, can you help me with my D1 recruiting? Like, I'm not getting recruited. And the problem was everybody knew he was like 24. So they were like, well, he can't, go anywhere. He's 24. And I'm like, well, no, it's a military thing. So I jumped on Twitter and used technology. Right. And I guarantee you probably got messages from me. Anybody that was a coach got messages from me with this kid's film. And I would just annihilate everybody's Twitter account with this film stuff. I'm surprised I didn't get banned. And then I would watch, because I didn't have very many followers on my personal Twitter account. And so if there was engagements with the tweet, I knew it was that coach that was watching it. So I would watch and see who clicked on it. And then I'd send him more film, and then I'd send him more film. And sure enough, like, Mike Magpio's hitting me. He's like, all right, tell me more about this kid. Or Jace Coburn. It was funny. I was joking the other day. I'm like, you both are head coaches now, like, which is awesome. Like, two of my favorite people in basketball. And they were two of like the OGs that hit me back and said, hey, tell me about this Solomon Heine kid. And so Solomon ended up going on and playing 3 years of Division I basketball, and got his undergrad, his AA, his undergrad, his master's. He went down to UTRGV. Luke McKay, wonderful person, wonderful coach, who just got the head job at Neosho. He recruited him down to play at UTRGV his final season. And so anyways, through that whole thing, I was like, I bet there's probably some more kids that could use some help. And so I started JUCO Advocate as a Twitter handle, and it just kind of went from there. And so now JUCO Advocate does all sorts of stuff. We go all over the world. We go to different countries. We go to Africa. We go to the Caribbean. We go to Europe. We run these free camps for kids. Everything we do is free for kids, and help kids get to college. And not always through junior college. I mean, now it's kind of, we got our fingers in everything. Nathan LeClaire and I are co-owners of the company. Verbal Commits is also under our parent company brand. So we're doing a lot of different things. But on the JUCO side of it, like I work a lot in junior college, and always will, regardless of all the other things we're going to do. It's just like a special space for me, because it's such a unique opportunity to tell some stories. And that's kind of like, the people say, what do you do? And I say, well, I tell stories. Like I help kids tell stories, tell their story. And so, yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it now.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you get a sense, what's crazy about the story, like, as I hear you tell it, is like Solomon Heine was not that long ago. This is what, when did this start? 7 years ago?
Oh gosh. I started JUCO Advocate as soon as he went Division I. So coming up on 5 years ago.
Only 5 years ago.
Yeah. We're not quite there yet. Yeah. Next month, I think.
Crazy the impact you've had in such a short amount of time. So let's talk about that. You mentioned like, okay, you start off by helping one kid and it leads to, helping a bunch of others. Did you get the sense that recruiting was moving to social media and specifically Twitter at that time? Like, were you always tuned into the recruiting scene, or did you just happen to use the resources that were at your fingertips?
I didn't really know anything about it, honestly. Like, I knew the only way that I could get to people was on social media, because I was in the corporate world, and I sat down one day and I said, oh, I bet I could buy an email list, right? And I can email all these people. And I was like, how often do I check my email? Like, I know how busy everybody is. All these coaches are and whatever. And so, I think it probably had to do with that Sam actually was the one that reached out to me on Twitter to come and help the staff with some analytics stuff. Like I was tweeting about, basketball analytics from my personal account. And that's when Sam hit me and said, hey, our coaches want to hear more about this stuff that you're talking about. So I'd already kind of seen Twitter.
Sorry, man, this is Colorado State, right?
Yep. Okay. So I'd already seen Twitter at work where like, somebody that I wasn't connected to at all saw something I was doing and wanted to hear more about it. And so, that medium just seemed to kind of make sense. It's different than Instagram and TikTok and things like that. Like it's more communicative. So like you can pass a message along easier, through what you say and what you do. So, that medium just kind of made sense for me to just go after it. And then like I said, it went crazy. And actually what's funny is now that Nathan and I run this together, at the time I was like, how am I going to figure out where the hell all these coaches' Twitter handles are? And I saw verbal commits and I was like, this guy follows every coach in basketball. I'm just going to follow everyone he follows. And so I was using verbal commits long before I had any idea what the heck verbal commits was or who Nathan was. So.
Well, it's funny you started out talking about, the coach you used to work for who wouldn't like adapt to having like an iPad in the huddle. And then you mentioned Mike McPio and Jace Coburn.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not scouring social media for like players, you're missing out, right? Like that's just the way it's gone.
Yeah. It's weird how many players are everywhere. Like, there's, you got lists and you've got rankings and you've got star ratings and you got all this sort of stuff. And like, unless you're Duke or Kentucky, you can't just kind of say, well, I want that guy. And you've got a 50-50 chance at worst of getting him. Right. So yeah, I mean, the fact that there's literally players all over the world, like you have to utilize all the resources you have around you to find these. And some guys say, well, that's exhausting. And you don't know who's legit and you don't know who's whatever. And like, yeah, unfortunately, that's part of the game. It's a big Easter egg hunt, right? I mean, if you want to win basketball games at a collegiate level, like it's going to take like a lot of extra doing instead of, just a couple phone calls and, you get something done. I mean, I wish it was that easy, but it's, there's a lot of stuff out there to sift through, but like if you put in the work, man, you can find some incredible kids.
Yeah. I think it used to be, you recruit regionally, right? Or like I'm from LA, so I'd be an LA guy. And if, I would have relationships with all the high school coaches, and there's still incredible value to that. And it's always going to come down to relationships.
Right.
But this is like the equalizer, right? Especially for the guys that don't have that experience or didn't play or don't come from this great lineage. You can unturn a bunch of rocks on Twitter and find some dudes. You still got to be able to evaluate.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You got to do your homework, but
yeah. It's turned into, it's taken the world and it's made it much smaller. It's like with anything that we do, traveling is easier than it ever used to be. And, communicating with people around the world. I mean, that's the first time I went to Africa was with Matt McAllister, who's a high school coach in Minnesota. And so I'm on Twitter and I'm doing my thing and whatever. And I get this message from Matt, and he says, hey, I like the stuff you do. And, I think junior college is a great opportunity for a lot of these kids. Do you want to come to Tanzania? And I'm like, hello, random person on the internet. Yeah, why not? And so, I was like, yeah, no, that sounds cool. It's like when you get drunk with your buddies and you're like, let's go to Europe, right? Like, yeah, let's go to Tanzania. And I was like, this is totally not going to happen. And the dude just like wouldn't let up. He's like, all right, when this is when I got to go. Like, I'm the national team head coach. And I was like, I don't remember ever seeing the Tanzanian national team play. He's like, well, we haven't yet. So like, I'm trying to like build a team and like build a grassroots program over there and whatever. And I'm like, oh, this all sounds legit. And so, we just kept doing it and talking about it. And I grabbed my buddy, Dan Poneman and Shay Frazee. And I was like, hey, let's go to Africa. And they're big idiots like me. And they're like, no, that sounds awesome. Let's go. And so the first time we met Matt McAllister was on the ground in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And fortunately, he was a real person, and he didn't catfish us. And we're now great friends and do a lot of work together, helping kids in Africa come over here and play college basketball. And so it's so the long story short, social media, technology, all those kinds of things, you never know where those opportunities are going to lead to. And if you utilize those mediums properly, sky's the limit, literally.
Yeah, unbelievable. What drives you crazy about like coaches and evals?
Oh boy.
And recruiting?
I mean, it's being closed-minded, right? Like thinking that this, rut that you've dug over the years of being a coach is the only way to do something, and we talk about like regional recruiting, right? Like that used to be the thing where, okay, if I'm at Indiana, well, I know I can get 6 players from within 150 miles in any direction. And if I'm Indiana, like that's what I do. And I'm going to do that. And you know what, man, it doesn't work like that anymore. Because that kid that's down the road from Bloomington, maybe he wants to go to UCLA for some reason. And like now UCLA knows who he is. Whereas before, UCLA didn't know who the kid in Bloomington, Indiana was. And also wouldn't even try because they're like, well, he's going to go to Indiana. Well, that's not the case anymore. And so you have to think outside the box, and you have to get creative, and you have to be willing to open your mind to new ideas, and don't fall into the traps of like, well, he's on the East Coast and we're on the West Coast and he won't want to come here and like the game is exploding. There are way more players than there are spots. Right. And so you really have to make an impact on your team. Like you have to open your mind up, and unfortunately for assistants, sometimes it's like my mind's wide open, my coach is over here living in this box, right? And he ain't coming out of the box. And so I get it, it's hard, but that's the thing that probably drives me the craziest is when I get on the phone with somebody and they just put it into this incredibly definable tiny little thing that says, this is what our team is, this is what we want, and this is where they have to be from, and there's no thought outside of that. And that's when my head goes.
Well, even beyond the geographical stuff, it's like, hey, we want a 6'7" guy that can shoot and put it off the, play off the bounce and is strong enough to guard
right.
a physical 4. And
right, they just all describe LeBron James. They're like,
right.
This is what I need.
I want that too.
That's not a thing.
But that's always like a heavily debated deal. Do you recruit for like your positional need, or do you take the best player available? I'm sure that's frustrating for you when you've got like a game-changing guard, but everybody wants like a 4 or 5.
Well, or just even that, we want a game-changing guard. And I say, perfect. Here's this kid. He does this. He does that. Whatever. He's a great kid. He's a great student, whatever. And they're like, yeah, but he's 6 feet tall and coach wants a point guard who's 6'4". And I'm like, okay, well, I would like all my hair back, but what are we going to do? And then I tweeted something the other day, and Vinny Shahid is out in Europe just destroying everybody. He's 23-6-6 or something like that. And I always like to kind of just joke with coaches on the phone and I say, so you're telling me if I've got Vinny Shahid right now, like you're not taking him because he's like 5'10", and they're like, oh no, that's not what I mean. That's exactly what you mean. Like if I got Vinny Shahid right now, you would say no because you want 6'4", as opposed to a winner who's a bucket and is a wonderful kid and whatever. And they just at this point, the fun thing about my job is that like I can kind of say what I want. And so I'm not intimidated by anybody. And so I have no problem, talking to a coach and telling them they're being a crazy person. It doesn't mean I'm always right by any means, but I could still say it.
Yeah, I feel like you've always been like that. Because I feel like I started calling you pretty early. I mean, I recruited Solomon Heine. So I must have been at the beginning of JUCO Advocate, And I remember seeing the social media handle, and I think we met in person at an event somewhere. But I would always call you and ask, for help with guys, like, what do you think of this kid? We need this. Do you know anybody? Because you really had a great handle, especially on those like Colorado, Wyoming JUCOs that not too many people go out there to see.
Right.
But I mean, you knew beyond that too. But I feel like you always were never afraid to speak your mind and tell the truth. Although it's cool to see 5 years later, now that you have established yourself,
It worked.
You really don't care. You have coaches that don't appreciate that.
I mean, if they don't let me know. They probably get off the phone and go, "This SOB, like I can't, I still got to call him later though because I need that kid."
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just everything that I've always done is I've tried to do it differently, and I think I probably have the advantage of not growing up in a basketball environment. I played water polo in college. I was in the corporate world for 15 years before I finally called it quits and did this full time. But I had an outsider perspective, I guess, on how the machine works. And so it probably gave me a little bit more fresh eyes to see, well, what if we pull this thing off over here and stick it over there and see how that works. And so that's where I've always tried to be different in the way that we do things. Just like even the concept of like, running all these different events and stuff and like not charging kids, like that's different. We work with NBA players, we work with sponsors, we, do different things so that we can cover those expenses without, digging into the pockets of the kids. And so that was kind of my first non-negotiable was like, hey, that's not what I'm going to do. And that was different. You see that every once in a while where it was, a charity event or something like that. But like, that's like our whole business model, which is strange and different to people. And so it's everything that we do is always been like, how can we do this different? How can we do cool stuff? How can we do things that other people aren't doing? Like, some of the doc stuff that we're working on. And that's different, right? Like, hey, not only let's go run a free camp in a foreign country, but like, let's film stuff and like, let's tell stories with that. And then let's start talking to production companies and let's start doing all these different things to say like, hey, this is pretty neat. Look at this, everybody's like, what are you doing? I'm a basketball scout. They're like, this doesn't make sense. Like, these are two different worlds. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Let's put them together. It'll be awesome. We got all sorts of things. We're working on fashion lines and different stuff with websites and things like that. So it's always just kind of been, hey, what can we do that's different and cool? Like if it's not cool, like I don't want to do it. And they say, well, J48, like you're not going to make any money on that. I'm like, I know, it's fine. We'll figure it out, but it's going to be cool. Like, it's going to be different. We're going to make this like the McDonald's All-American of junior college, and it's going to be awesome. And so here we are.
And it has been. Yeah, so much to talk about, so much I want to get into. You mentioned like seeing how the machine works and having that outsider perspective. Mm-hmm. And it's true, like you just said it, like you still do stuff that's fun to you. Like you enjoy what you do. I've seen it really. I mean, I kind of always had an eye on it, but especially these last 2 years being out of it, like getting out of the rat race and stopping coaching, like I'm able to see how people get trapped into this like rat race and the machine. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like what you've seen in that perspective? Because it seems like people are like, you've created your brand just on doing you and having fun doing it. And like, why is that so hard for people? Why is that such a foreign concept?
I mean, basketball is this interesting space where there's always this is the way that it's done, right? And a lot of like the successful head coaches in basketball, they've been in it forever, and they learned from another guy who learned from another guy, and this is the way that it's done. And we're seeing some changes now, I think, where like Coach Magpio, he just does things differently than other people. And he's been incredibly successful. He's going to continue to be incredibly successful with that. And so that's exciting for me, because I think people get into basketball and they get all excited about, doing something that they love. And then they very quickly don't love it anymore. And, it ends up being a lot of conversations about, this is hard and that is hard and, whatever. And it's that way in any line of work. Right. So you've got to find a way, I think, to, keep it exciting. You've got to find a way to keep loving it. You've got to find your reason and your passion for why you do it in the first place. Because if if the only reason you do this, excuse me, is to just make people better at putting an orange round thing through an orange round thing, you're gonna burn out, because the pressure in college basketball is crazy, right? I mean, it's like a Fortune 500 company on 3-year contracts, and you have to accomplish certain goals, otherwise that's it. And there's not a lot of businesses out there that have that kind of pressure in it. And so guys just eat themselves up with, the minutia of it. I always tease people. I say, as soon as a guy becomes a head coach, especially at the Division I level, as soon as somebody becomes a head coach, they become a crazy person. And so I called Jace when he got the Portland State job. I said, look, dude, the second you start acting like a crazy person, I'm going to tell you. And I've told people in the past, because there's another coach that I said, hey, when you start acting like a crazy person, I'm going to tell you. And he started acting like a crazy person. I got on the phone and said, yo, you've got to relax. You are going over the edge here. You gotta reel it back in, because you're not the same person that I talked to 6 months ago, kind of thing. And that's where the say whatever I want part comes in. But everybody gets so wound up in it, they forget why they love it in the first place. Right. I mean, if your sole goal in this whole process is the orange round thing through the orange round thing, all right, man, good luck. Because it's just, you're going to burn out. You got to remember, why you like working with, goofy 18 to 20-year-old kids, right? What about that? Who volunteers to do that? Right. So there has to be a reason why you like helping kids. You like, you like to go out and see the world. We get to go see the world as basketball people. Right. We always talk about oh my God, I got more Marriott points than I know what to do with, because I'm in this hotel and I'm in that hotel, whatever, find ways to enjoy that. Take advantage of the fact that you get to go out and see and do stuff that other people don't get to do. And, just really kind of dig into yourself and say, okay, this is really why I do this. And I need to spend every day at least addressing that in some way, right? If you love doing this because you like helping kids, right? Well, yeah, you're going to have offensive meetings, and you're going to, your head coach is going to yell at you about something, and you're going to have to, oh my God, did somebody take care of, team meal, and blah, 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 blah. And at some point during that day, find a way to help one of your kids. Find a way to talk to one of them. What's going on in their life? What can we do to make your life easier? And it's such a rewarding thing. I mean, I do this because it's fun and I enjoy it and all that. But at the end of the day, the juice is really in being able to help somebody, and whatever it is for you. It doesn't have to be the helping side of it. Maybe you love, I don't know, being on TV, but whatever it is, find that. And spend every day doing something to do with it. So otherwise you're going to burn out.
Yeah, it's great advice. And you see so many people burn out, and everybody always wants to know, even the people that are still in it, Adam, what's it like getting out? What's it like? What's it like on the other side? I tell them the first thing I did, because I unfollowed verbal commits. It was amazing. Because I used to be glued to that thing, man.
Yeah.
And that's the hard balance, is to be good at your job, you feel like you have to be dedicated to it 24 hours a day. And that's where guys like you can be such a valuable asset. But you gotta trust those people's opinions, and I think you gotta be able to sell it to your boss, kind of. That's kind of It's
Well, like
happening.
work-life balance is a multi-billion-dollar a year business, right? In the corporate world, people spend stupid amounts of money trying to figure out ways to keep employees happy, to really improve their work-life balance, to find different ways. I mean, you look at Google and you walk into Google and look, Google is a different place, right? But they spend a ton of money trying to figure out how are we going to keep these people happy as we're, doing all this stuff. And in basketball, we're like, I don't care about work-life balance, right? For the majority, right? There are some coaches that are like, no, 6 o'clock, we got to, we got stuff we got to go do. I want happy employees, which turns to happy coaching, which turns to happy kids, which turns to a lot of times winning, which is weird, right? Like happy employees make, better choices. Happy employees treat other people better. But in basketball, we're like, hey, we're in this pressure cooker and screw your work-life balance. I need a list of 150 kids that we're going to start recruiting like by 6 a.m. And, we think that that's like a healthy thing, and it's 100% not. And I think it's, I hope it's changing a little bit. There's kind of this transition from one generation to the next of head coaches. And I hope that some of these guys that become head coaches soon kind of understand that like times have changed. Kids, you can't say and do some of the stuff to kids that you used to be able to, and just like that, you can't say and do some of the stuff to assistants that you used to. But you know what? On the other side, like when people are happier, they're better workers or better employees. And basketball is not different than any other job. Like you have certain things you have to do, and you have a work-life balance you have to keep, and you have goals that you need to accomplish. And there's a lot of unknowns, in basketball, just like there is in any other business. And, if you can find a way to kind of keep people happy and keep people motivated and keep that energy flowing through them. We see them when we go out on the road, right? We go to the Final Four and you see the guy that is just waxed. I mean, he is burned out. And it's like, God dang, like how can you spend 8 months in a situation where you just can't breathe? And then as soon as the season ends, it starts all over again. Because then it's the recruiting side of it. And it's the, getting ready for the next 8 months when you can't breathe kind of thing. Like that's not healthy. And
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it just, a staff's mental health leads to your players' mental health, which leads to a lot of things that go on within a program that affect winning and losing.
Amen. That's the sick part to me is like that summers have changed really from the time I got into it. Like when I got into it, you couldn't work dudes out in the summer. Right. And so summers are pretty like laid back other than recruiting, which, right. You had a big break and then you recruited and then you had another break and then you got your guys back. And now it's just year round and it's like the grind never ends for a lot of programs.
Yeah. Yeah. Like my phone never stops ringing. Ever.
Yeah. I bet.
And so, which is fine. I can just not answer my phone, which I have to be better about. But my phone is ringing nonstop because somewhere somebody is always working and like working a lot.
What's next for JUCO Advocate and for Verbal Commits and all the different brands that you work with?
Man, it's been an interesting year because while we feel like we couldn't go out and do anything really per se, the work didn't stop. I was probably busier in the last year than I've ever been. And a lot of that is because of some of the stuff that we have coming up. Not a lot that we can really talk about quite yet, but it's coming soon. We have some technology things. We have some media things. We have some name, image, and likeness type things. We have all this stuff that we've been working on for the last year, just kind of like gearing up and getting ready for, when the world is ready to hit the ground running. And so here later this summer and into the fall, like we've got all sorts of cool stuff that's going to be coming out that the people that follow Verbal Commits are going to be awfully excited about. The people that follow JUCO Advocate and like seeing some of the things that we do around the world, they're going to be excited about. And so, yeah, we're just kind of pumped for kind of all this stuff. I mean, I've got a whiteboard here that's just full of things and stuff to get done. But I'm excited. Like I said, we've built a business on doing cool stuff And so now we made this massive list of cool stuff, and we're just kind of chipping away at it.
Who's we, Brandon? Who's on your team?
So we've got Nathan Leclerc, who's a equal co-owner of the company with me. And so Nathan, a lot of people don't know this. Well, I think more people do now because I've gone out and said it, but Nathan runs verbal commits. So when you see all the tweets and you see all this stuff like that, that's one guy. That's Nathan banging away on that laptop. And so one of my promises to him was that we'll get him some help here this fall as we get some other things going. But yeah, so Nathan runs verbal commits. David is our financial guy in the background, and then Matt is our in-house software engineer. And so that's a nice benefit to have when one of the co-owners of the company is a coding machine. And so he's awesome, and he's working on some really cool stuff. And we've got Nils Deckow down in Texas, who runs Texas Top 100. And Nils is kind of like my oh no, I need help, Nils guy. And so he was one of the co-founders as well. One of the founders of our company was Dan Poneman, who a lot of people know. And right after I started the company, because he was one of the first people that I ever reached out to and said, "Hey, I don't know anybody in basketball. I'm trying to find this Solomon Heine kid, a Division I school. Can you help me?" And he just happened to read the DM, because his DMs were about like mine, where now I get 600 of them a day. And he just happened to see it as he was scrolling through, and he saw the story, and he's like, "Oh, this is cool. Whatever, I'll help this guy." And so then I just kept blowing him up, and Dan had kind of moved out of basketball a little bit after his crazy story, was into like representing rappers and doing some other stuff. And I said, "Hey, I got this JUCO advocate idea thing. You want to start it with me?" He's like, "Yeah, okay." So Dan kind of really helped ignite this whole thing for me. And then probably 6 months after we got started, he's like, "Okay, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go be an NBA agent, but good luck." But he got the wheels rolling, and now we're incredibly close friends and help each other with stuff now. But yeah, so actually none of this probably gets going without Dan, because Dan was like, "I don't know, here's 5,000 coaches' phone numbers, like you should start calling them." And here we are.
Where do you see yourself and like the company in like, I don't know, 5 years, 10
Man,
years?
I hope I'm paying somebody to do all the little stuff I have to do every day just to keep the thing going. No, the part of the company that makes me get up in the morning is people like Gideon George, where I got to go, travel, and I got to meet incredible people, and I got to help incredible people, and I got to help tell that story. And so for my part of it, like that's the bit that keeps me going. And so I think 5 years from now, the company is going to be in a place where we're doing a lot of significant storytelling, and we're using our technology prowess and our position in the marketplace, I think, to share a lot of information to help move a lot of things down the field for coaches and for kids in regards to recruiting and all that sort of stuff with our technology products and things. But we're also we're significant storytellers. And the good part is the more you do of this, and as you get better at it, and the more success you have, the more stories you get to tell. Right? It's for us, it's not a, do this equals X profit. It's do this, pay the bills, which allows us to do more, and just more and more and more and more, and we'll see how much we can do.
Where does the storytelling come from for you?
Man, I don't know. So I'm an Air Force brat, and so I grew up getting to see the world. I lived in England and got to travel and got to experience a lot of different cultures and different people. And it's funny because like my job out of college was like the like cool job. Like I negotiated lawsuits for a living for an insurance company. Like, it was awful. Never talked to anybody that was happy. And so I don't know if like I realized when I was younger and I was seeing the world and I was getting to meet all these cool, interesting, unique people that like that's when like you're happiest. And then it's like, hey, you got this thing where you live in this box and like you have, you know, I'm sending TPS reports every day or something. And I was like, oh, that sucks. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to go back to doing the thing that was like when I was a kid, like I got to tell stories, right? I got to go to unique, cool places and meet unique, cool people. And I go back to school and I would tell stories like, hey, I saw this guy and I was in Luxembourg and, you know, we did this and we did that and whatever. And then I was like, hey, you know, what would be cool is like doing a job where I get to do that. And then, you know, when you meet people like Gideon and Hatiki and Corleons and Jerry Kabantu and Atem Chol and all these different, you know, kids, Tyreek Singh and JP Frederick, Owen Nelson, like you meet all these cool, unique people. And then it's like, hey, I have this thing that I do where I can help you. And then I can help you like tell your own story. And that's exciting. Like doing something and being able to tell a story is great and awesome. And I love it. But doing something and meeting someone and being able to help them and then help them tell their own story, like that's the best.
Do you have any like influences, like who in the business world, or like, is there a model you're following, or like, is there?
Oh no, we make it up as we go.
What about a person's lead or influence that you like to draw from?
You know, it's funny. One of the first people that ever might have been the first guy that offered Solomon was Mike Magpie when he was at Campbell. And I remember him saying something at the time like that his background was different or something. And so I remember going back and just, there was an article, I think maybe that Campbell had done or something about where he had come from. And he was in the corporate world. And so we did a podcast with him not too long back. And that was a lot of fun because we really got to dive more into that story. And I remember thinking back at the time that like, okay, hold on. This guy was out in California. He's making $1 million a year, you know, doing real estate stuff. He's got his own company. The thing's doing great, whatever. And he did what now? You know, and he, you know, dove into this basketball world with not much of a parachute on his back. And just attacked it. And I remember thinking like, okay, that's awesome. Like I'm in my 30s now and I've been doing this corporate grind and I hate it. And I would have like these panic attacks where I was like, I'm going to wake up and be 70 and I'm not going to have done anything. Like, you know, when somebody says, oh, what'd you do with your life? And I'm like, not much. I negotiated a lot of lawsuits, you know, like you have your family and you have your kids and you have, you know, things like that, of course. But like, man, I want to go out and do something. And I remember reading Coach Magpie's story and then talking to him about it all these years later and stuff, and just thinking that was cool to like take that leap and say, you know what, this is what I'm passionate about and this is what I want to do. It doesn't have anything to do with money. It doesn't have anything to do with you know, stability even, which just sounds insane. It's like, hey, what's this super unstable thing I can go do? Yeah, that sounds good. And so like that inspired me, you know, to see him do that. And of course now I'm just, you know, overwhelmed with joy about how happy I am for him, that he is now a head coach. You know, he got that contract extension here last month, I think. And it's so cool to see, like, you know, somebody that has, like, I kind of followed that path a little bit where, you know, I had something that was normal, right? You know, I'm sure my parents had a heart attack when I quit my job, and just saying, you know what, I'm just going to go do this. And this is what I'm passionate about. I'm going to figure it out. So.
I love it. And you're certainly doing it, man. So I'm sure your parents are proud of you now.
I think they still have little panic attacks every once in a while.
Well, Brandon, I appreciate you being on. I think this was really cool to get some insight on, you know, how you guys started and what makes you guys tick. And Man, you seem to be on the right side of pushing the game in the industry in the right direction. So I appreciate you speaking out for those things, and excited to see, some of the things on that whiteboard behind you come to life here in the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, me too.
Well, Brandon, we appreciate you being on, man. And thanks again. And good luck with the continued success.
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks.
All right, buddy.